Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Child Care Bridge. This is our first episode with Angela, where we are able to start to dive in deep into all things Angela's center. So I'm going to have Angela tell us a little bit more about her background, a little bit more information about her center. And the cool thing is that all of our listeners, you're able to be a fly on the wall over the next several months as I work hand in hand with Angela to not just get the business on the right track, but to really help her set this up for whatever she's looking for in the future. Whether that's to grow to more locations, whether it's to be able to grow it and sell it, as we kind of talk through all of those different things, is to give her a business that she can also step away from. So these calls and these meetings are going to be raw. They're real. None of this stuff is scripted. And while we have agendas for these different sessions, at least I have agendas on my side of questions and things that I'm going to ask, you're going to be able to kind of see where I go. And it's my hope that as all of you are listening, that you start to pick up things that you can then apply to your center. And I can promise you that most, if not all, the challenges that Angela is facing are things that you have faced before or things that you're going to face, whether that's staffing issues, whether that's growing enrollments, working on the metrics and the numbers at the business, or how to read financial statements, to cash flow challenges. I mean, and any of those different things, I can assure you that you have faced them before. So Angela, welcome to our first episode together. I would love to just kind of have you tell our listeners just a little bit more about you. I know you've been in the industry for quite some time, but tell us a little bit more about your background. And I think from everyone that I've talked to, you entered the industry at the youngest age out of anyone that I've ever seen. I think you entered it at 14, kind of being a teacher's helper. So tell us more about your background. And then after you do that, I'll ask you some questions kind of about your actual center.
Okay. So like you said, 14, I used to walk right past I think it was a La Petite Academy. And I always loved children. I'm the oldest of 4. And one day I just walked in and I said, I want to work here. I'll do it for free. And they were like, okay. And I started out being a helper, and then before long, they gave me my own class. I don't know if they were short-staffed, but I was very mature and got a lot of babysitting jobs out of that. And eventually got to the point where at 19, I was running my own center as a director. And then we moved to Mexico and did some stuff there with kids, mostly volunteer stuff. Came back. I have 7 of my own kids, so kind of have my own little mini childcare going there. And went to school to be a teacher. Worked in the public schools. Everything went great. Loved it. Kids love me. I love them. Felt like I was really making an impact on the future, which has always been my, end game, my motivation. And then after all my kids were grown and gone, I decided to adopt 5 more from the foster care system. And so started all over again, and decided to take my retire early, take that retirement and invest in a daycare, because that's really what I've always wanted to do, is get back to running my own daycare. So
probably one of the most interesting stories out of anyone that I've ever heard. I don't know too many people that have been able to start off and be a director running a center at 19. That adopted so many kids. Whereabouts in Mexico did you move to?
It was central Mexico, Querétaro. There's a university there now. There wasn't much there in the 80s when I was there, but But yeah.
What a cool story. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. And you taught high school also, didn't you?
I did. I taught English, high school English, and then was certified ESL. So most of my students were from other countries. And then I went and got my master's in teaching English to speakers of other languages. So learned a lot in the language side, which really helps in this business because, you know, early childhood is all about language acquisition. That's your, you know, developmental window of opportunity. So, you know, when we start talking to parents about, you know, kids who are coming here, been at grandma's until they were 4, and they're almost nonverbal, you know, it really starts to open their eyes as to the benefits of early childhood education.
Would you say and if you hear me pausing, I'm just thinking and processing some of the things that you're sharing. Would you say then that the reason that you got into the business of childcare was for your love of kids and wanting to make a difference? So what was that tipping point of wanting to move from, obviously you were in the industry very young, but is there something else that drew you to actually open up your own center?
Well, I was looking at buying a business so that I had more control over the day-to-day, when I could take off, things like that. You know, with 5 kids from foster care, they all had special needs, and I found I was really not able to hold down a full-time job and take care of that. So, you know, I wanted to buy a business, and childcare just seemed like the natural thing for me. What I didn't know at the time, being very naive, is you can't really buy a childcare business. You can buy their responsibilities, but you pretty much start from scratch. And I did not know that going in. So
elaborate a little bit more on that. So what do you mean by you can't buy? Sorry, I'm just getting myself adjusted here.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Okay, so you can go on and you can go to like Biz Buy Sell and different sites that sell businesses. And there's plenty of daycares on there to buy. But when you get down to the things that really count, you know, your license and all of that, you start from scratch. You have to send in all your information, your education, your background. It's all on you. Then you get a new licensing inspector. They come in, they look at everything. And it's like you can't really piggyback off of, you know, when I thought I was buying a center, I thought, oh, well, I just go in and, you know, clean it up and make it pretty and, you know, wait for the kids to show up. And I actually, it was the strangest thing because the childcare that I actually ended up buying, it was presented to me, and that's another thing you have to watch out for, is there's a lot of, like, I guess, fraud or taking advantage of, you know, people who don't really know what they're doing. The one I bought, it was owned by a doctor, and the guy that sold it to her said, oh, it's, you know, it's a great investment. You know, you get all this money and all you have to do is just sit back and watch the dollars flow. Well, after, you know, about 9 months, she saw that what it was is a money pit for her, and she wanted to sell it right away. So it was a big loss for her, unfortunately. But what I ended up buying was her lease. So I took over that responsibility, basically everything that was related to the child care. I took all that on. And then, you know, I thought I was getting, you know, their enrollment, which was supposed to be 40 kids. Well, it turns out the director got wind of the sale and took the kids and all the teachers, and that they just like all left. The director told the parents that they were closing. She told all the teachers, you know, you better find another job because this daycare is going to be closed down. So when I came on board, I got the 2 kids who didn't get the memo and 1 worker.
I think that's an interesting point for everyone that's listening. Is I know a lot of people have wanted to acquire another center. I think that one little piece there, and even just the relationship between yourself and a director, I've seen that go bad so many times where
oh my gosh, yes.
All of a sudden what ends up happening is exactly what you just described. Then the directors start whispering and, hey, did you know that they're going to be raising your rates? You might want to look at this other center. And all of a sudden they already have another job. And all of a sudden, as you said, and your enrollments kind of dwindle down. So tell us a little bit more about kind of status quo. So you acquired the business, pretty much had to start from scratch, minus the 2 kids and 1 helper or 1 worker. So essentially from scratch. Yeah. And kind of fast forward to today, and give me kind of the 10,000-foot view, and then I'm going to ask you some different questions around people. We're going to talk a little bit about the money side. We're going to talk about plans for the next couple of months. And I'm going to give you some homework assignments. I'm going to give ourselves some homework assignments. And really what you're going to find, I'm going to be looking for low-hanging fruit. Okay. Are there some things that we can help you with quickly? It's that whole phrase of little hinges swing big doors. Are there a couple of little hinges that we can put in place that can start to move things in the right direction? So tell me a little bit more about kind of status quo. Tell me about enrollment. Tell me about team. Kind of give me that 10,000-foot view, and then I'll ask you for some more clarifying pieces.
Okay. So we're licensed for 73 kids. One thing I wanted to throw in there, just to piggyback off the whole director thing, I think a lot of owners don't realize how important your director is. After going through 2 directors, I finally just said, forget it. I'm going to direct my own center. And that's really what just, I don't know. I went from having, 20 to 30 kids. In 2 months, I had doubled enrollment just being my own director. Because, nobody's going to be more passionate about what you have to offer than you. And then, of course, the experience, my background and education, those are all, major selling points. And I knew if I could just, get people in front of me, they'd sign up. And that's pretty much what happened. Anybody that came through the door, they signed up. And I don't have any trouble in that way. My biggest problem is getting staff. That's the biggest thing. And just when I get somebody who is like indispensable, trained, wonderful, well, guess what? They get a job offer paying twice as much and pulled right out from under me, so it's a huge competition right now for good staff because of all the stuff going on with, COVID and unemployment and all this other stuff. My payroll has tripled. When I started, I could get people in here for minimum wage plus a few bucks, and they felt they were doing really well, that I was paying them $9 an hour instead of $7.50. And now it's like, I can't even start somebody for less than 10, which I don't know. The rest of the country, it's probably, those numbers are probably crazy low anyway. But here in Houston, within a 3-mile radius, there's probably 30 or 40 daycares in a 3-mile radius. So we've got that going. But big picture, we have a beautiful center. Our Our staff is really well trained. We have a bilingual curriculum. That's a big selling point. I think the thing that gives us the biggest edge is we're open until 8 p.m. and no other daycare does that. We're open 7 days a week. No other daycare does that. So that's really given us the edge. And even parents who don't need it, when they hear that, they're like, oh, wow. You know, kind of like, wow, it's there if I do need it, you know, kind of thing. So yeah.
So it sounds like you've, and if you can't tell, I'll be casual on our calls, so feel free to drink. I've got some coffee, some water, so these are meant to be casual. So, I mean, it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, you've kind of been beaten up a bit. I couldn't agree with you more about the hiring challenges. It's something that we're hearing from everyone, and I want to talk through that a little bit. Looking at the hiring piece. In terms of even a bigger picture, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, do you see more centers? Do you want to stabilize and then sell? What is, I guess, what is your vision? Do you want to pass it on to someone in your family? What does that look like?
Well, you know, since I used my retirement, you know, I would like something that I don't have to work 14 hours a day. Eventually I want to get to that where, you know, I can take a week off and not be worried the entire time. For example, I took Monday off and came back. I was looking through the cameras for something entirely different, discovered that one of our workers left a 3-year-old on the playground for half an hour. And, you know, I was horrified. And it's just, you know, thank God I have the cameras. They're a huge selling point. They're expensive, but they're totally worth it. But, you know, it's like, I'm just like, feel like, you know, when can I leave? You know, I've always got that. Even when I've had directors, I felt like I had to be here because, you know, one of them ended up, you know, she was stealing from me. And it was little things that you don't really miss unless you're specifically looking for them. But, you know, and she was lying and anyway, horror stories. But, yeah, a big picture, I would love to have another center or even just expand this one. I would like to move out of the strip mall setup, although I've done a really good job with what I've had to work with. I want my own standalone building with a, you know, nice yard and that sort of thing. That's the ultimate, where I own the real estate, you know. And, you know, I'd like to have more than one, but if all I have is one, that's fine too, you know.
So from a financial side, you've had to invest all your retirement back into the business to kind of keep it afloat? Is that?
Well,
or you used it to buy the business?
I used a very small percentage to buy the business. And I did invest a lot in, basically, when I bought it, it was like 12 years old. There had been, you know, it had changed ownership hands, you know, 5 or 6 times. And it was really run down. I had to pretty much take everything out and redo it, all the floors, everything. I think I put about $60,000 in renovations. No, that was just labor. Probably $80,000 in renovations. And that was my biggest expense. On month to month, you know, our income is, of course, enrollment, but also the food program brings us a nice, steady income. And as far as all my retirement, no.
So if we look, if we go back to the financial piece, so you and I talked a little bit before I turned this on for our live broadcast, but correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of looking at the numbers, so financials in particular,
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you're practicing, I guess, what I would call kind of bank account bookkeeping, essentially.
Yes.
So you're looking at what's in, what's out, and you're
Mm-hmm.
making. All right. So one of your first actions for you is going to be to get me the bank account stuff
Mm-hmm.
for, let's just start with 90 days. So 90 days prior. And what I'll have our team do is we'll actually put that into a very simple kind of Google spreadsheet so that we can at least start to size up the numbers. So one of the first things that I always do when I'm going in to look at how can I improve a center, how can I just improve a business?
Mm-hmm.
I've got to know the numbers. I've got to know not just, what you're paying your team, but lease and things like that. Are you taking a salary for yourself out of the business?
Just recently started doing that.
Okay.
Very recently.
Got it. Last year, and I know you haven't done taxes and things like that. And so I'm going to hate to use this word, but do you have a feeling if you made a profit last year, or did the business lose money?
It's hard to say. I'm definitely down 100,000 from where I started, but then it's really more like 200,000 because 100, or wait, no, that's not right. 10,000. No, it was 100,000. Was the loan that we got for COVID. So the government gave me, I think, 115,000. And so, I'm inching closer to where I was when I started. I'm still not there yet. So I'm probably 100 down from what I started with.
Got it. So, in reality, not 100% certain on kind of where the numbers. So if you're not actively looking, or you don't actively have stuff in QuickBooks, for example, you're having to kind of use a feeling. So again, not trying to beat you up. This is the whole point of these is where can we help? And our focus won't necessarily be tax optimization and things like that, but I definitely will share things like that. I have a pretty heavy background in finance.
Yeah.
So marketing and finance are kind of my two areas. So one of your first homework assignments is going to be to get me bank statements and or credit card statements for a 3-month period. So ideally, and you could, if you wanted to go back even further, do it from the beginning of this year, ending in end of June. And then what I'll do is I'll have our team actually put this into, we won't put it into QuickBooks or anything like that just yet, but we're going to get this into a Google Sheet. So we can just at a high level start to see, okay, great. And I'm just going to use very, very simple math. I apologize. How many enrollments do you have currently? Roughly?
I think we have, it's between 60 and 70.
That's what you currently have. So this location is almost full?
Yes.
It's great.
There is one thing about that is that because of the hours I'm open, I'm able to have more than 73 enrolled.
Okay.
Because I have some kids that only are on weekends. So they're not all in the center all day, every day at the same time. So potentially I could even have, 150 kids enrolled if half of them only came on the weekend.
I follow you. Got it. So I guess at a high level, the financials, I'm going to put it to where, okay, great. And what is your average tuition across those?
So I'm just going to say 150 because it is so unusual how we do our enrollment. We actually charge by the hour, and it's contracted. So if you come in and you say, I need 40 hours a week, it's going to cost you $160 a week. So that's our average kid. But from there, we have kids who only come 2 days or only come, who need us 60 hours a week, things like that. And that's kind of evolved from where we started, where it was like, this age group charges this. I think that's how most daycares do it. If you have an infant, it's 180 a week. If you have a toddler, it's 160, that kind of thing. We kind of went to the hourly just because it just works better with the hours we have and things like that.
That one, I think we'll probably have to talk a little bit more about that one. I don't know. I don't think I've ever, I personally haven't heard of that, but it doesn't mean that we don't have. So we work with a few hundred centers across the US. So our listeners kind of have gotten to know me and my background and what we do a bit, but I'm sure that we have some centers that we work with in and around Las Vegas that probably do something like that, but I can't think of another center that does it hourly. So I'm probably going to look for some more research around that to see if we can optimize that, because 150, I mean, that number is a tad low. So one of the things that I also told you before we turned the recording on was I started calling. I didn't call all 30, but I called, I would say 13, 14 different centers. We went a little bit wider. So I looked for centers that were a little bit bigger, and the 150 is definitely on the lower side. Most of them are a little bit closer to 2.25.
Oh, we're definitely a bargain.
So, yeah, I mean, so from what you've shared, and I think that's, again, how as we go through this process and looking at things like your website, there's nothing that conveys your background, for example, the open 7 days. And let me rephrase that. There's nothing that jumps out at me that tells your story. So one of the things that we're going to work on in the coming weeks is revamping your website with, you've got that lengthy story that's on the homepage as people scroll down, but I want certain buzzwords and certain phrases to really speak to the parents. So if they don't read that big paragraph on your website, for example, I want them to know, I want them to see how you're very, very different. You have some really great content on the website. So we're just going to look at kind of rearranging some things to make it a little bit easier for those people to take action. But the good news is that the spot that you're in, we don't have to make, at least initially, enrollments as the number one focus. If you're close to full, even though you can have more, we're definitely going to work on how can we drive some more to your center. But I would rather we focus on some of the business fundamentals of the money stuff. I mean, if we're not able to make sure that you're making money, and making money also means that you're able to pay yourself a reasonable salary, and then there should be money left over thereafter. So very, very simple math. Let's say the business is bringing in $50,000 a month across all your different enrollments. And let's say you're paying yourself $50,000 a year salary. Yeah. And then after all the different expenses and things like that, I want to make sure also that there's some profit that's left over. And that's then going to be some of the numbers that we start to work off of. And we're going to look at it. Are there some areas that we can optimize things? Do we need to potentially play with your tuition a bit? Could we get it to the point where we have 100 leads and you could get to a wait list? And if that's the case, once you have a wait list, one of the first things you look at doing with a wait list is that your prices are too low. So we might find, well, geez, the market really can bear $200 a week, and you're now getting a $200 month boost times 60. And if you were breaking even, all of a sudden you've got $10,000 a month of profit. Now, I'm not saying that that's what I'm going to suggest. I need to look at your numbers first. And we're going to look at lead flow and things like that to kind of make some of those decisions. And everything we're going to do is we're going to test everything. So nothing is going to be dramatically changed where all of a sudden there's going to be this huge rate hike and you lose half your enrollments. We're not, and everything is going to be your final decision. We're just going to make recommendations based on what the data is telling us and based on what I'm seeing across hundreds of other centers. So first piece is going to be financials. So your homework assignment, your first one, is to get me, again, the stuff that I can analyze the incoming money and the stuff that I can analyze the outgoing expenses.
Okay.
So I want to see how much is going to payroll. And then I can ask you a bunch of follow-up questions after I start to see that. Okay, I see payroll is 20,000. Can you give me a breakdown? $5,000 is going to a director, $5,000 is going to you, $10,000 going to teachers. So I'm just speaking in general terms and generalities, but that's what I'm going to start to look for. And then also just sizing up some of the other pieces there. Ideally, we will be able to very quickly find some things that we can optimize. We might find, you mentioned the phrase horror story earlier. We might find, I don't know, we might find some enrollments that haven't been charged for 6 months, which I have seen happen in other centers. We might find, errors in paying the team where they got an extra week or two pay by accident because something got screwed up on the pay. I'm not saying that that's happened, but as we start to analyze the numbers, we need to get that in place for you so that as we're having conversations about growth, about expansion, I don't want you to have to look at the business bank account and make the decision, do I think I can expand or not? We want the data to tell us, can we expand? Does it make sense to take out a loan based on where the business is at? Do we need to first do X? So that's where we're going to start is the financial side. The other piece of the conversation that I wanted to have today before I let you go is one of the things that I noticed earlier when you were talking. I want to hear a little bit more about culture at your center. So tell me, and maybe there isn't a culture. So for me, there's either a culture that's by design or by default. And for many, many years, when I first had my career in business, I actually didn't even know what culture meant. And we definitely had a culture by default where things were just chaotic, and I didn't care less about, it was all over the place. But as I've gotten wiser and learned more, I've realized that culture is kind of the cornerstone of a successful team in an organization. Tell me a little bit, how would you describe the culture at your?
That's really a tough one. I don't know. Most of our employees are Spanish speaking. About half of them, that's their first language. As far as culture, I would say we have a history of extremely high turnover. Last year, I think 70 employees came through here. And
how many do you have currently?
About 15.
So your staff turned over 5 times?
Well, when I started, I tend to be very optimistic to a fault. So I would hire people who had really no experience. If they expressed a desire, I believed in that potential, and a lot of them didn't last till lunch. And I'm not kidding. They were out of here, went to lunch, never came back. So, there's that. I've learned a lot of stuff. Experience is so important. And experience doesn't mean, babysitting. Culture, I like to say it's fun. But we do have a lot of kids. Probably 10% of our kids are on the spectrum, and they're extremely difficult. And I'm sure that probably might have something to do with the turnover. They're just really tough kids to work with, and even I don't feel like I have the background knowledge, whatever, to care for an autistic child who is nonverbal, 6 years old and still in diapers, so I'm sure that has a lot to do with it.
Why have you taken on those enrollments?
because I can't say no. That's the shortest answer I can give you. You know, a lady came to me, she was foster family, had 6 kids. She's like, you know, the day your competitor charges me $600 a week. Would you take all 6 for $600 a week? That's when I had 20 kids. I'm like, yes. And so I didn't know that those 6 kids, you know, 1 would be on the spectrum, 4 would be oppositional defiant disorder. And that, if you ever hear that word, run, because they will turn your whole center upside down. And I had 4 of them from the same family. The only kid in that family of 6 was the baby, who was just adorable. But when I tried to raise the rate to something more reasonable, they just went down the road.
Did you take those families on because of the cash flow side, or did you take them on because of your desire to help? Because you fostered,
Yeah.
you got what, seven kids?
Yeah.
Or was it a combination of both?
Well, I have 12 total.
Got it. 12. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. 5 were adopted from foster care.
Okay.
3 years ago. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I really love kids, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's both. I think it's, you know, the desire to help, but also, you know, you just, you know, you don't say no to money. But then, you know, when I'm losing workers because of it, and I've got, you know, my CFO, telling me, you know, you really shouldn't be taking these kids on. They're just too high maintenance. You're going to run your workers to the ground and they're going to run away. And sure enough, that's what happens. You know, they get burnt out and they leave. And it's not that they go to another center. They leave childcare.
Are you, and this is, you don't have to necessarily answer this right now.
Mm-hmm.
You could think about this one. Are you open to, removing isn't the right word, but are you open to parting ways with those families?
I am. There are some kids that I'm going to start. I have to. Last year I had 30 after schoolers, and they are the most destructive kids. And a lot of people think that after schoolers is, you know, easy. They're only in your center for, you know, after school, but boy, they can do a lot of damage in those 3 or 4 hours that they're here. They're the ones that are always causing the most trouble, the most injuries, the most serious injuries. And right now I've got about 30 of them on my rolls. A lot of them, they went on their summer break, and I think when they come back, they're going to be like, sorry, you didn't tell me you were going on break, and I gave your position to somebody else.
Got it.
So
action item number 1, we've got that you're going to get me the financial stuff. Mm-hmm. Action number 2, I would love if you could send me some notes on each of your current team members. Mm-hmm. So tell me you can shoot this in an email. Send me, here is the director, here are the teacher leads, things like that. Do you have a director, or is that your position currently? Got it. Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, I'm about to lose half my staff because I hired some great, intelligent people who are all going to school. And now, guess what? They're all about to graduate at the same time and go into the medical field or dental hygienist or nothing related to childcare. And they were excellent while they were here, but now they're done. And they're all graduating at the same time.
So the other thing then we're going to have to jump on is getting up some really good hiring ads. But what I want you to think about, and this one's going to take some more effort. I'm going to have someone on our team send you one of my favorite books. And the book is called The Painted Picture. It's called The Vivid Vision.
Hmm.
His first book was called Double Double. This is by a gentleman named Cameron Harold. He used to run the company 1-800-GOT-JUNK as the chief marketing officer. And he helped grow the company from 4 million to like 150. And now it's probably, gosh, I mean, $1 billion company. I'm not sure. One of my favorite things that I learned out of that book is what he initially called a painted picture. And now he's rebranded it to being called the Vivid Vision. So I'm going to send you the book. And I want you to execute the vivid vision in the book. And what you're going to do is you're going to write this as if it were 3 years out. So end of 2023. So 2.5 years out, December 31st, 2023. And you're going to write all the different sections that the book describes, and you're going to write it as if it had already happened. So for example, the last 2.5 years have been a whirlwind. We first started off by expanding our one location, and we added 50 enrollments. I was able to acquire another center, take over their building, got it for a steal during the Great Recession. And now we've got that location, and I've got money in the bank to buy a third. This is what our staff looks like. This is what the financials look like, how much you're paying yourself. This is the role that you're playing. So you're writing everything you're taking out of your head as if this is exactly how you want your business to look like in 2.5 years. It is my favorite exercise because one of the big challenges that we're going to have in helping bring you staff is that we need to really work on the culture side and make sure that I do believe that it's a combination of having challenging kids, but also if you're not necessarily able to describe the culture fully to me, we might want to work on some exercises on our call coming up and talk through some things and give you some core values. So if you don't have kind of business core values, we're going to want to work on those together. And one of them might be fun. One of them might be, fail forward. That's generic, but so core values, you're looking at me a little confused. So core values tend to be the 3 to 6 things that usually they come from the owner and they are emotional, typically in nature. So what I mean by that is one of them. So, I have never met anyone else that has 12 kids. So even that, I'm seeing some of these families on TV, like John and 8 plus 8 or whatever. They're 19 kids and counting some of those shows. And I've never actually talked to someone with that many children. So I commend you for that. I can barely handle my 4. My wife handles them. So again, I can't even do it. But the core value side, it's more of the personal side of the business. So one of the words that I could guess may go on there would be compassion. And okay, great. So what does that mean then? Okay, this is what it means. It means that we're going to take on families that we know we can help, but we're going to be compassionate towards the families that we can help, and we're going to help them get placed elsewhere, or we're going to be compassionate towards each other. So we want to go through and start to come up with some words that we start to then help kind of morph your culture a little bit. And these words are going to be used on your job descriptions. They're going to be used during your hiring process. And what you're looking to do then is when you're screening, we're actually going to be screening not just for job fit, but we're going to be screening more for culture fit. So if one of the words is compassion, or even if one of the words is fun. So, okay, great. Tell me, what do you like to do for fun? Well, I don't really get to have much fun. They're instantly not a culture fit. I would move on to the next person. So I think we work on that on our next call. Please go ahead.
One question I thought of that I guess it really does go with our culture is like asking a potential, what's the last book you read? Because one of the things about us is our curriculum, and it does require you to read. And if you have someone who doesn't like to read and they don't like to plan, they're not going to do well. But definitely compassion, quality, affordability, My vision was to provide affordable care, but at very high quality. I'm modeling my center on, the big ones who are pulling into $250 a week. That's what I'm modeling them on, as far as, having this curriculum, and it's very nice and clean and all of that. But then I'm charging, what my competitor down the street, who doesn't have as nice, is charging.
We're definitely going to be looking at raising your rates. I just want to analyze your financials first, but you're definitely undercharging, and we're going to have to raise your rates. But before we do that, I want to make sure we have all of our other ducks in a row, so that if some families do leave, I don't want you to be, oh my gosh, Michael, now we're in this cash crunch. I want to have families lined up, ready to enroll and ready to go. And to do that, then we're going to start deploying the marketing pieces. But the foundational pieces we need to deploy, we've got to get it to where your financial numbers. That's number one. And then the second piece, having that amount of staff turnover might be the highest that I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's bad.
That's going to affect your enrollment numbers. It's going to affect your Google reviews. It's going to affect your growth, your brand. Mm-hmm. So I want you to send me kind of a write-up of your current team, and let me know, just send me a write-up of the people that will not be leaving. And then I need some notes in an email of what positions are we going to have to help you fill. So we're going to brainstorm also then probably on our next call of kind of deploying our hiring strategy. So yes, it's a tight hiring market. However, I can tell you that there are a lot of ways and a lot of things that we can do to position you front and center. And it's not always the money piece. Yes, there's going to be some people that if you can't pay them $20 an hour, they're going to go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But there's also going to be people that they're going to be more attracted to you and wanting to learn from you, and wanting so there might be some people that are attracted to you that have adopted kids, people that have wanted to do kind of mission work or work in other countries. So we're going to find people that they're going to resonate with you.
And they're definitely my best workers. The one I just lost that just absolutely broke my heart, she took a position, and she's already my highest paid worker, but her church came to her and offered her a position as a preschool teacher, and she took it. And it's like $3,000 a month. I'm like, I will pay you $5,000 a month to stay. And she's like, oh, I can't, I already accepted it. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'll give you $2,000 bonus right now. No, I can't. I already took it. I already accepted it. I can't go back on my word.
So and this one you can decline, or you can think about this one offline. I would love to have a conversation with her and or a few people that have recently left, because I can promise you, in not a good way, she's going to spill the beans about something else. She's going to be like, she might say that it's the 10 kids. So with that amount of a pay difference.
Well, it's her church. It's her church.
Got it.
She is an extremely loyal person, but her church and her faith come first.
Got it. Well, then you might have me on that one. That's a lot of money, though. That just seems like there might be something else there, but maybe it's her word and it's the faith piece. But I would love to even have a conversation with a few people that have recently left.
I'd like to know.
They're going to be brutal interviews. Mm-hmm. But when we have that and we have that knowledge, that's when we can start to morph some of these things. So we need to not only build kind of a bulletproof center, so where we've got a moat around it. And I always love to use the analogy of a moat around your center. Mm-hmm. So I want it where your brand is recognized, but I also have to get it to where you don't have to work these 14-hour days, because you're going to be burned. I mean, you're already burned out.
I am.
And when you add on having that amount of kids, I have no idea how you're even having this conversation with me. So we need to get it to where the financials are moving in the right direction so that maybe we can afford to hire a director, for example, and to take that off your plate. But I have to size up the numbers to be able to look at and start to advise you accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
But it could be, okay, great, we're going to raise the rates. And then in turn, there's going to be $3,000 a month of profit, and we can hire a director. So we're going to look at all that. So financials, you want to get me that. The next piece would be giving me a write-up on your team members that are, are not leaving. So give me a couple of bullets and their email address.
Well, that shouldn't take very long.
Got it. Well, that's good and bad. And then in another message or the same message, tell me what positions we're going to need to fill. So that on our next call, we can start to work through that particular piece of we've got to start recruiting for these people pretty quickly, because otherwise you're not going to be in ratio and all of that fun stuff. So, but I also don't want you to have to hire out of desperation. Oh my gosh, we got to get in ratio, because then we're going to have that same turnover thing. And with that amount of turnover, that one thing alone probably accounted for $100,000 or more of leakage out of your business, probably more. So
I know it's huge.
The nice thing is, as we start to, and again, I mentioned to you, these are going to be raw, and the whole point is to start chunking through them and to build it to where you're happy with the business. You love your team and your staff, where you want to come in and you're excited, and not having to come in on a Tuesday saying, oh my gosh, I wonder what happened on Monday, to find things like you had mentioned.
Yeah.
I want the money to be there so that you're starting to see the fruits of your labor, because otherwise it would you just should sell the business and go back to teaching and make more money. So I want to get it to where the money also makes sense, so that we can start to have that piece. And the final piece that kind of wraps all of this up, though, it is that vision, that vivid vision document. So I'll get that book to you. That I encourage you to read it as quickly as you can. And on our call next week, we're going to talk through some core value stuff. And one more little assignment, sorry, it would be to give me the names and or emails of some people that have recently left, and I will entice them with like an Amazon gift card to talk to me, and I'll get some notes to see if there's some other things that you're not aware of. Or maybe there's some things about you that you're not going to want to hear. Like, oh my gosh, her energy stresses me out, which I'm sure my team probably about me. So, okay, great. So that I can help work with you and coach you as a leader.
Well, like one rule I have is, you don't sit on the job. We're not babysitters. And I've had people tell me, like, seriously, you have to sit sometimes. I'm like, yeah, sit, put a child in your lap, sit at the table and color with them. But, don't sit on your phone. It's stuff like that. And I'm rarely sitting. I'm always on the go. I'm always moving. And
we've definitely got our work cut out for us, but this is going to be fun. So you've got your homework assignments. I'm going to turn you loose to start working on those. I've got the stuff that we're going to be following up with you as well. We'll get our next session on the books, and we're going to focus on some culture stuff. And we're also going to, so we can then start to get that moving. We're going to work on the hiring piece so that we can start to get some of these job ads up, so we can start looking at attracting some of those really good team members. We're going to start there, because that to me is the lowest hanging fruit, in tandem with myself and my team going through your numbers. Going through the numbers might take a week or so, depending on how organized you have it. But I've got a feeling we're going to have to spend some time to get that dialed in. But if we can at least start moving the needle on the hiring stuff, the culture stuff, we'll start moving you in the right direction. One of my favorite gurus is Tony Robbins, and he always says progress equals happiness. So the whole goal is just to start to make those incremental pieces of progress each and every week, so that you can see the progress, you can feel the progress, so we keep the momentum going. Thank you for being so raw on our first live episode. And I will connect with you next week. Hope all of our listeners enjoyed this as
all right.